I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Благодарю вас.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I'd like to start with two introductory comments. First and foremost, it would be remiss of me not to note that we consider it to be completely wrong, namely the decision which was taken during the reconstruction of the Security Council chamber. Mr. Szymanowicz should not cover the historic picture, which is what the world recognizes the Security Council by. The second introductory comment. We do understand that everyone has a right to holiday, including Mr. Szymanowicz. However, it is clear that Mr. Szymanowicz is a little divorced from reality here. It is not clear what Mr. Poroshenko is saying regarding Poroshenko's proposal, why he's saying such good things about the proposal of President Poroshenko regarding a ceasefire. We're not aware of this. Yesterday, the Ukrainian authorities stated that they have ceased the ceasefire regime, which was established pursuant to Security Council Resolution 2166, to create the necessary conditions for an objective international inquiry into the death of the passengers of the Malaysian airliner. And now this investigation, unfortunately, is finding it difficult to continue. And now I'm going to move on to my statement. The Security Council did not request the UN OHCHR's report. So this council shouldn't be discussing it. All the more so as the report is but an example of exquisite political rhetoric, where facts and conclusions are shaped to fit a certain political requirement. In reading the report, what jumps out at one is the absence of what it seems should be the first thing to expect of UN human rights defenders, namely a call to the sides to cease military activity, as if the right to life isn't the first right of any human being. The report found no space to condemn cases of the use by Ukrainian security forces in populated areas of artillery, of MRLS systems, of aviation, as well as phosphorus shells prohibited by international conventions. But in passing, is there any reference to the promise by Ukraine not to bomb the Donetsk and Lugansk regions and ensure their security? Nothing is being said regarding the florid promise which was made by President Poroshenko to the inhabitants of the Donetsk and Lugansk regions on this very topic. There is no reference to this treacherous breach of promises. The escalation of the so-called anti-terrorist operation, with its many casualties amongst the civilian population, continues. Ukrainian security forces are shelling residential neighborhoods and infrastructure. There's no end to the shelling of Gorlovko. Yesterday, 5 individuals died there. 10 were injured. A church burned down. A power transformer station was destroyed. The water supply has been interrupted. Thursday morning, the center of Donetsk was again shelled. Shells fell onto a hospital admission ward, as well as residential high-rises and a trolley bus center. Overall, 156 power substations, 18 boilers, and 7 gas lines were destroyed. These are but a few examples. In this, the report pushes the idea that the self-defense formations are to blame for everything. They are accused of everything short of cannibalism. For example, in paragraph said, it is said that the self-defense formations are intentionally striking critically important infrastructure. In other words, they are not only firing upon themselves, they are doing this intentionally. What leads to this gem of a conclusion? And why is there no similar conclusion regarding the actions of the Ukrainian authorities, which are methodically bombing residential neighborhoods? Sometimes from one day to the next, they are firing on the same almost destroyed high-rises. A separate topic is the situation of children. According to our information, in the Donetsk and Lugansk regions, there are 1,223 child orphans. The authors of the report qualified the efforts of the self-defense formations to take the child orphans to safety to the Russian Federation as an attempted kidnapping. In one of the episodes of the report, there's a reference to very ill children, which Russia could provide expert assistance to. With a sense of satisfaction, it is stated that as a result of the intervention of the Ukrainian authorities, the children remained in Donetsk. It seems that UN philanthropists believe that children thrive under fire. Russia's requests to human rights situations regarding the evacuation of children have not received any response from Kiev. And what do the UN human rights defenders believe about this? Don't children deserve safety? Over 820,000 Ukrainians are currently finding shelter in Russia. Requests for residency rights number 188,000. In our territory, we have set up 643 temporary shelters for those who have nowhere else to go. Currently, there are 47,500 individuals there, out of which 16,000 are children. The report is quite prolific in terms of advice proffered to the Ukrainian authorities. For example, it is proposed to incorporate those who are eradicating the population of southeastern Ukraine, the so-called volunteer battalions, into the armed forces of Ukraine. The criminals which are currently killing women, children, and other serious violations of human rights must be arrested and must be passed on, and justice must be meted out to them. Instead of this, it is proposed that they should be legitimized. Perhaps one should legitimize also the foreign mercenaries which are participating in the so-called anti-terrorist operation, which is something which isn't even being covered up anymore by the Ukrainian authorities. It would be remiss of me not to mention the extremely biased picture depicted by the report regarding the situation of journalists. Allegedly, only one representative of Russian media was detained and then released by the Ukrainian army. And the detention and beating up of journalists from the television channels of Zvezda and Live News is passed over in silence. It's absolutely false, the report's version that 2 Russian journalists who died could have been killed by the self-defense formation. Mr. President, referring to the situation with human rights in Ukraine, one cannot concentrate solely on the territory under the control of self-defense formations, which, judging by the report, sees a complete absence of rule of law. Is there any rule of law in the rest of Ukraine? In the report, there is a passing reference to a number of steps which are aimed at banning the Communist Party of Ukraine. These legitimately elected parliamentarians are currently being harassed and persecuted, including by law enforcement agencies for their political convictions. This is but yet another step in the systematic punishment of those who have come to power as a result of the armed revolt of their political opponents, which represent the southeastern part of the country.
Now, a clear example of the disregard for the principle of the rule of law is the lack of progress in investigating the serious crimes committed in Maidan and Odessa and Mariupol. And the current atmosphere of fear is that any wonder that the inhabitants of Odessa and other inhabitants of the country do not trust the investigators sent by Kiev and refuse to cooperate with them, while documents having to do with these crimes are disappearing without a trace. This is mentioned in the report. Now, it is clear, and this is confirmed in the report, that the armed forces, including the security service of the Ukraine, have unprecedented power now and are clearly violating fundamental human rights. They're seizing people without due process, using violence against detainees, using the tactics of intimidation and force to beat testimony from witnesses. Now, bearing in mind that the justice system is paralyzed, what sort of impartial investigations and prosecution can we talk about? The government of the Ukraine openly flouts commitments undertaken, including under the Geneva Declaration of 17th of April. The conduct of constitutional reform at the Ukraine that envisions decentralizing power, expanding the authority of the regions, and giving the Russian language a special status is being put off indefinitely. In fact, there is talk now of strengthening the presidential power, which is exactly the opposite of what the Maidan demanded, which the government is trying to disperse, by the way. It begs to ask the question, what did people fight for? Mr. President, we want to once again underscore the harmfulness of attempts to add a violent resolution to the crisis in the Ukraine. We call an immediate end to the military actions in the country and the speedy beginning of the constitutional reform. And the solution to the humanitarian problems. A very important step should be a speedy beginning of constitutional reforms, which involves all the regions of the Ukraine and should be accountable to public opinion. As for the unfounded conjectures regarding the Crimea contained in the report, which is part of the Russian Federation, well, basically this cannot be a subject for discussion today, which is dedicated to the situation in the Ukraine. Having adopted the historical decision on reunification with Russia, the inhabitants of the Crimea have delivered themselves from the horrors that are unfolding for everyone to see in the southeast of the Ukraine. Thank you very much.